All right, let's talk serverless. You've heard the term, you know it's a big deal, and you know it's changing how we build software. But when it comes to the cloud, two names dominate the conversation: AWS Lambda and Azure Functions. So today, we're putting them head-to-head in a serverless face-off. Who comes out on top? Well, let's dive in and find out. To really get why this is such a big deal, you have to look at how we got here. I mean, think about it. We went from racking our own physical servers to dealing with virtual machines, and then to containers. Every single step was about getting further away from managing the actual hardware. Serverless? Well, that's the final leap. The whole idea is to let developers focus on just one thing: writing code. You just write it, and the cloud takes care of the rest. It's pretty incredible. And the magic behind this is a concept called function as a service, or FaaS. The best way to think about it is that your application isn't one giant program anymore. Instead, it's a bunch of tiny specialized functions. And these functions, they just sit there, dormant, not costing you a dime, until something triggers them, like a user uploading a file or an API call coming in. Then boom, the function wakes up, does its job in milliseconds, and goes back to sleep. And you only pay for those milliseconds it was actually working. No more paying for idle servers. Okay, so let's bring our fighters to the center of the ring. First up, the original champion, the one that started it all, AWS Lambda, launched way back in 2014, and it pretty much created this entire market. And in the other corner, the powerful challenger with some serious enterprise backing, Azure Functions. It showed up in 2016 and quickly became a huge favorite, especially for anyone already living in the Microsoft world. All right, ding, ding, ding. It's time for round one, the tail of the tape. We're going to put these two side by side and just look at the raw specs. Let's see how they measure up on paper. So at first glance, you might think, hey, these look almost identical. And yeah, for a lot of things, they are. The language support is fantastic on both sides, covering all the major players. And that free tier, it's basically a carbon copy. 1 million free requests every single month is incredibly generous. But the devil is in the details, right? Look at the maximum time in memory. Lambda gives you a full 15 minutes and up to 10 gigs of memory. Azure Functions on its pay-as-you-go plan tops out at 10 minutes and 1.5 gigs. So what's the takeaway? For those really big, heavy-duty jobs, Lambda just gives you more raw power to work with. Okay, on to round two, the performance clash. Specs are one thing, but how do these things actually run in the real world? This is where we get into what might be the single most debated topic in all of serverless. And that topic is the infamous cold start. You hear this term constantly in serverless circles, but what does it really mean? And more importantly, why should you care? It's actually a pretty simple idea. To save resources and save you money, the cloud provider puts your function to sleep when it hasn't been used for a while. The cold start is just the delay it takes to wake that function back up. It has to find a server, load your code, and get everything running. This little bit of latency can have a massive impact on your user's experience. And wow, this chart really tells the whole story. On their standard plans, AWS Lambda has managed to get cold starts down to just a second or two, sometimes even less. But look at Azure Functions. On its equivalent plan, it can take upwards of 10 seconds. For an API that a user is actively waiting on, 10 seconds is an absolute eternity. So in the cold start showdown, Lambda scores a decisive point. Now, both of these platforms are absolute monsters when it comes to scaling. They can handle huge amounts of traffic, but they do it a little differently. Lambda is designed to react instantly, fanning out requests across thousands of instances to handle a sudden spike. Azure has a scale controller that watches for a backlog of work and then adds more capacity. Both approaches get the job done, but Lambda's method is generally seen as being a bit quicker to react to those really extreme, unexpected bursts. All right, let's head into round three, the developer's corner, because performance and specs aren't everything. What's it actually like to build and manage applications on these platforms day to day? This is all about the developer experience. You see, as your apps get more complex, you quickly move beyond just having one function do one thing. You need to chain them together, run things in parallel, handle errors. Basically, you need to conduct an orchestra of functions. This is called function orchestration, and it's absolutely critical for building any kind of serious business workflow. And this is where the tables completely turn. On AWS, you use a service called Step Functions. It's very powerful, but you define your workflow in a big JSON configuration file. It's more declarative. Azure, on the other hand, gives you durable functions. This lets you write your entire complex workflow directly in code, using things like async await that developers already know and love. For many, this workflows as code approach is way more intuitive and powerful. So in the orchestration battle, Azure lands a major blow. And if we zoom out a bit, the best developer experience really depends on your team's background. AWS has fantastic command line tools and an ecosystem of services that is just massive. But if you're a team that lives and breathes Microsoft tools, it's not even a competition. The deep integration of Azure Functions with Visual Studio and Azure DevOps is just a dream come true for .NET developers. It's unbelievably seamless.
So after 3 intense rounds, we've reached the final verdict. We've seen some clear strengths and weaknesses on both sides, so who's the champion? The truth is, the winner depends entirely on the fight you're in.
Let's break it down by job. If you're building a real-time API where every millisecond of latency is critical, AWS Lambda's low-cold start time makes it the champion. If you're in an enterprise that runs on .NET, Azure Functions is the undisputed king. That integration is just too good. If your main challenge is building complex, stateful workflows, Azure's durable functions gives it the crown. And finally, if you're a startup moving fast and leveraging the widest possible array of cloud services, the sheer breadth of the AWS ecosystem makes Lambda your go-to. So here's the final scorecard, the key takeaways. AWS Lambda takes the win on pure performance, especially those critical cold starts, its rapid scaling, and its absolutely massive ecosystem. But Azure Functions scores a knockout on enterprise integration, what many developers feel is a superior day-to-day experience, and its incredibly powerful built-in orchestration tools. And that brings us to one last thought. We've framed this as a one-on-one battle. But in a world where multi-cloud is becoming the new normal, maybe picking just one platform isn't the final answer. Maybe the real victory is in knowing the strengths of each and using the right tool for the right job, no matter which cloud it happens to live on.